Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a psychotherapist, astrologer, and yoga teacher working in Wicklow, Ireland and online. And welcome to this video about January 2026. January 2026 is such a moment of crossing the threshold from last year into this year energetically, and also just from the old world into the new world. So we're at a moment of huge change in astrology in this kind of 2 or 3 year period. And January and spring 2026 are a real crossing of the threshold in this wider transition. So the outer planets in astrology, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn to some extent, their movements mark the changes in our kind of chapters, our epochs, the bigger evolutionary periods of humanity because they move so slowly around the zodiac. So when they move, we really feel it. And at this moment in history, all of the outer planets are actually moving sign at the same time, which is pretty unusual. So at the end of 2024, we had Pluto move into Aquarius for about 20 years. And then 2025 was a real glimpse into this new energy that we're moving into because we had the rest of the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, sort of dip into the signs they're moving into, but then they retrograded back. So last year was sort of this very transitionary. We were sort of mostly kind of moving out of the old, but we got a little taster of, the new atmosphere that we're moving into energetically, particularly in July to sort of September in 2025. And with all the outer planets moving sign, they're also all of them moving from water and earth signs into fire and air signs. So energetically, it's like the whole atmosphere and music and vibe that we're in is moving from this more slow moving, introverted, wetter, darker, damper yin energy of earth and water into much faster moving, more expansive, lighter yang energy of fire and air. So there's a real sort of gear shift in that. And I certainly was feeling that myself last year. It's like life has sort of started to speed up. So there's a lot of density that we've been moving through that needs to be kind of shook off and shed now, before we can kind of pick up the pace, or as we start to pick up the pace into this new energy. And the other piece that's been really big last year, and we carry it into this year, is the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So Saturn and Neptune have been meeting together in the sky at the end of Pisces, moving into Aries. And Saturn Neptune conjunct is the coming together of Saturn, the planet of reality, structure, limits, time, systems, responsibility, really that sort of like reality principle, material sort of energy, and Neptune, the planet of oneness consciousness, of the ocean of spirituality, mysticism, and illusion and addiction. And when the two meet, we have this moment of dissolving of structures. So Neptune dissolves whatever it touches, and Saturn is kind of the fundamental structures of our reality. There's a lot more to that transit. Any transit is really like multi-dimensional, so it's occurring in a lot of ways. But I think in terms of this big transition, that is one of the core elements and really powerful pieces is collectively and individually, there's this real dissolving of the limits and the structures and the foundations of our systems and our realities. And we're definitely seeing that, collectively, like global systems and structures are shifting. Things that we thought were definite limits apparently aren't, stuff that's happening, some we kind of probably didn't think just could happen in the world we live in. And also there's this questioning of reality and creation of illusion with AI coming in as well, which I think also kind of touches into this transit. And then individually, it's like on a really foundational level, our structures, our ego structures, the systems we kind of live in psychologically, personally, have been dissolving. And that's really intense. That's like not an intellectual exercise. And this has been happening all of last year. And then in November, we had this grand water trine that came in and really kind of oomphed this up and activated this. And I was actually calling November as like the great dissolving. It was like a real just washing away of everything that we'd been working through last year, really kind of washing it out. We're sort of just emerging out of that now at the end of December and coming into January. And when we talk about like psychological structures, like old structures dissolving, it's not just beliefs. Beliefs is maybe part of it, but it's literally like wired into our nervous system. We carry these patterns of energy in our body as well. So when they are being shifted like this, it brings up a lot of emotion. And we're all going to be feeling this in slightly different ways. But I don't know anyone who didn't move through a lot last year. And it can be quite like primal wound sort of territory. So it can bring up a lot of like shame, inadequacy, fears, deficiencies, dissatisfaction, stuff that's really hard to tolerate. That's why we kind of psychologically build structures around it so that we kind of keep it at bay. But that limits us then, we like structures support us and they limit us. And so this dissolving of them is also opening us up for new possibility. But I just don't think it can be overstated that it is like quite deep rewiring and restructuring. And the Saturn Neptune conjunction is continuing into 2026. So it's really potent at the moment, at the beginning of the year, but it will continue for the whole year. But it comes into a slightly different phase because it moves from Pisces, which is the end of the zodiac, and in itself is this sort of great dissolving, letting go, it's kind of almost like just releasing into the void altogether. And we move into Aries, the beginning of the zodiac, fire, initiation, the individual, the spark of life. So it will take on a slightly different element and tone to it when it does that. And there is this other part of Saturn Neptune conjunct where it has the potential to be really manifesting, creating, bringing into manifest reality dreams and really beautiful things. But I think the first part of it has been much more showing us our limitations and also showing us where we're not in touch with reality, where we're actually believing in illusion and making assumptions that actually aren't quite true. So that limits us as well. And so the challenge now is really kind of to be bold, try things, be action orientated, be vulnerable and take risks and see what happens. Don't be limited by those old beliefs and illusions and stories about the way things are and were, because we don't know is the truth. And especially with this energy and the astrology at the moment, like we're coming into completely new territory. We do not know. And so being open to uncertainty and being open to embracing vulnerability and risking, trying things is going to be it is a real superpower at the moment. So then January, what we're in at the moment is there is this Saturn Neptune conjunction at the final degrees of Pisces. And at the end of the month, we will have Neptune moving into Aries. But we're also with all of the personal planets, so Venus, Mercury, and Mars, all conjunct the Sun. They're all with the Sun in Capricorn. And this is also sextile. It's in relationship with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So this feels really related to this great dissolving of the foundational structures that we're in and kind of have been moving through last year. And when the personal planets, Venus, Mercury, and Mars, conjunct the Sun, there's sort of this quality of like renewal and almost rebirth with that they pass through the Sun's rays, its energy, they're kind of cleansed and they emerge renewed. And we can't see them when they're conjunct the sun. So it's sort of like they disappear and they're reborn. Venus, Mercury, and Mars relate to our kind of personal psychological elements. So, like, Mercury is the mind, it's communication, expression, thought. Venus is love, it's the heart, desires, receiving, relating, beauty. And then Mars is drive, anger, in all forms, healthy aggression, being able to assert yourself, go for what you want, and more tyrannical aggression, domination, war. And, depending on how your relationship is with it, passive aggressiveness, all of those are related to the Mars archetype. And so it's really interesting to be in the context of this really foundational rewiring and washing away of structures to come into then this sort of renewal of all of our personal psychological elements. All of these planets were directly conjunct the sun in Capricorn early on in January, around sort of the 6th and the 9th. And I know for myself, like, I just felt this huge letting go. It was like there was a lot of energy, huge energy, but no efforting. It was like I couldn't kind of force anything. I sort of just had to let things go in their own flow because there was almost too much energy for me to have a grasp on it. And it's not a great time for taking action and driving forward, but it is a beautiful time to tune into intentions, and get clear on things. And then this kind of rebirth and renewal of these personal psychological elements sort of continues into the new moon in January. So we have a new moon on the 18th of January in Capricorn, but it's conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So it's at the very end of Capricorn and it's in relationship with that Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto itself is rebirth. Like, so Pluto is a very intense energy. It brings this renewing, cleansing, alchemizing fire to whatever it touches and refines it and destroys anything that's not real so that it can be reborn in a purer form. So this is continuing on this transformative sort of feel to all of these personal elements of our psyche. If we are really taking astrology seriously, at least one way to look at it is from this field perspective, that we're all in a field, a unified field of consciousness, of energy, and so the planets are mirroring to us these archetypal forces. And so what's happening with the planets is also happening within us. And so right now, there is a complete reconfiguration of how these forms of consciousness and creativity move through us. So really noticing for yourself how your creative process is showing up, where you're frustrated, where you're rushing things or where you're delaying things, and why. Is it fear? Is it, what gets in the way? And also, even tuning in really physically to physical instinctual drive energy in the body, to the heart space, to the emotions, to the mind, and to the voice expressing and noticing, like, where do you feel the emotions? Where are you feeling the blocks? And I would really go deep with this because January, it's sort of like there's a real integration of a new way of functioning, of a new way of these energies moving as we move into this sort of new world. But right now, in spring, but in January in particular, is really a process of personal integration on kind of quite a complete level and also quite a deep level. And so really feeling into it in an embodied way, reflecting on the patterns that are coming up, noticing what shows up for you in terms of being open to receive from the world, where you limit that, where you feel undeserving or expecting disappointment, and also how much you communicate or how much you hold back. And listening is also part of communication, how you're receiving the world into the mind, what are the limits there, and also that like drive to actually move, to take action, to do, to assert yourself. And where are you feeling frustrated or where are you feeling new motivation? And then do you follow through on that or do you get in your own way? because the old ways are not going to fit in the new world. So I was trying to think of a good metaphor for this. It's a bit like you have to get a new car or a new computer. The old system has been washed away. So you have this new system. It's actually much faster. It is more efficient. It's more open for creativity, but you haven't used it yet. So now you're starting to drive the new car or work on the new computer or use the new phone. It's difficult because you haven't done it before, so it feels new, but it also might reflect to you your old habits. It's like when we're in the system, we're in our habitual patterns, our ways of moving and thinking fit. But if we take ourselves into a new environment or we're, driving a new car, like I'm used to driving a manual. If I drive an automatic, I go for the clutch the whole time. So it's actually kind of difficult, even though automatics are meant to be easier to drive. So things like that, it's like I notice what I'm doing because the system doesn't respond in the same way. Whereas if I was in, my car or a manual, like I wouldn't even notice that because things are just moving and that's how it works. So at the moment, as we get used to this new structure that we're in individually, and as it keeps shifting, it's not that it's changed, but we're in this real point where we're starting to move in it. It's like the energy is starting to flow. We're starting to relate and create in these different ways. So we're also really seeing old habits, old energies, old emotions, old beliefs that haven't quite been let go of yet. The more open to possibility we are, and the more we can let this energy, always, the more we can let energy and consciousness flow through us, the more we can create and the more harmony we can move in with life. And it's really interesting, this new moon conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, because the new moon being in Capricorn but conjunct Pluto, it really feels like this kind of boom moment of bringing us forward, because Pluto is sort of the creative pulse and drive. And it has moved from Capricorn, which is tradition, structures, systems, into Aquarius, innovation, technology, revolutions as well, community, sort of futuristic ways of collecting together as individuals. And it's like we're being pushed over the threshold with it. So it's, we're in Capricorn here, but we're actually being pulled into Aquarius, being pulled into the future. And all of the outer planets, as they're about to move sign, they're all actually in conversation with each other. So they're sort of in this sort of triangle shape, where they're all relating and the energy is moving between all of them. And this new moon happening here at the end of Capricorn actually comes right into that configuration with all the outer planets. So it's a really potent time of everything kind of being in this field of energy shifting over the threshold as we kind of move forward into the new world. And what's it going to look like? We don't know is the truth, but the more we can be open to new possibilities, to the energy flowing through us uninhibited, the more we can create something different, which is really what's kind of wanting to happen. We're really being pulled forward rather than stuck in old systems. Or, this level of kind of newness brings a lot of uncertainty. So there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of wanting the stability and the security that the old structures and that familiarity bring. And that's just really not available, and it's not going to be available. So how we ground ourselves, how we support ourselves to be open in the face of uncertainty and let it be open to creative possibilities rather than swimming in fears is like the vital question at the moment. And then continuing on from this new moon on the 18th, we sort of have all of the personal planets then kind of parading over Pluto one by one. So Venus moves over Pluto then on Monday the 19th, then Mercury on Thursday after that, the Sun moves over on Friday, and Mars is conjunct Pluto on Tuesday the 27th. So it's just really this continuation, they're all really in the field with Pluto, but one by one they're moving over, they're being refined, rebirthed, transformed. And then Mars being conjunct Pluto exactly on the 27th is just like such creative poetry from the universe, which is what we always see in astrology, because that's the same day, essentially, that Neptune moves into Aries finally. And Aries is, of course, ruled by Mars. So around the 27th, the end of January, we have this movement of Neptune into the fiery Martian sign of Aries, where it's going to stay for like about 14 years. And at the same time, we have Mars, that planet of fire, drive, and the warrior, conjunct Pluto. So really magnified, like a lot of power to it. And so Neptune is kind of brings in like the myths and the milieu, the sort of undercurrent that you don't really notice, but it's sort of weaving the atmosphere we're in. And that being in Aries means we're all really going to be kind of held in this melody of Aries for the next 14 years, collectively and individually. So the warrior, pioneering sort of energy, starting new things, taking initiative, the individual. What does it mean to be alive? You know, Aries is like the first breath, the spark of consciousness, like the ignition of life, of existence. So what does it mean to be alive? How do you feel about it? What do you want to do with it? What do you want to take action towards? All of these things are going to be relevant for this period, and it'll be really worth meditating on Aries and on Mars and noticing your relationship with them. And the last time Neptune was in Aries was actually around the age of imperialism. So we did see a lot of pioneering, like the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. There was a lot of reconfiguring around global dynamics and like the scramble for Africa for minerals. I'm not a history buff. I just looked this up for the astrology. But there was a lot of this kind of creating something new and new beginnings globally, but also, you know, the shadow side is it is about war and aggression, and it's not just the healthy assertiveness of like coming into life and taking action on creative impulses. It can also be immature, egotistical, self-centered domination and individualism and the drive for newness' sake. So it's all sides of the coin. And I think this new moon as well in Capricorn conjunct Pluto, like there is a huge power to that. And like considering the global space that we're in at the moment, I think that's only going to increase in unrest in all the ways, probably over the next few months. So, really paying attention to yourself during this time, taking time and space to allow for integration, I think is just really, really important. You know, it's happening. It's not that you need to force it to happen or have it all figured out. It's actually really just not possible to have it all figured out. And I don't think it's possible to force it to happen either. So it's about supporting yourself. Like, how can you give yourself the space, the resources, the presence to allow your system digest all of this that's happening? And what do you need for that to be possible? Like often we need to be held in presence to really allow our system assimilate and digest, whether that's community or a guide or a professional. And so I am really excited to share that I'm opening a new space on Monday the 19th in the wake of this new moon in Capricorn for this kind of integration. So it's going to be an online session on the Monday evening, and it will be part of a monthly container for at least the first 6 months of 2026, where we'll gather on Zoom at 7 o'clock in the evening Irish time, and we'll reflect on the astrology that we're in, that we've been moving through. We will look ahead to what's coming in the next month, but it's really not focused on prediction. It's focused on the much deeper process of reflecting, integrating, processing the energies that we're moving through. And I am mixing it in with meditation and some Kriya yoga as well. So there will be some lovely supportive breath practices and Kriya yoga practices that will be chosen to best support us in the transits, to support the alchemy that wants to happen, and to kind of strengthen our system as we move through together. And it'll hopefully be a wonderful community space, that it's going to be a group field where we can support each other, where we can come into presence and, be resourced then to open ourselves to the uncertainty of the highest possibilities that we can't see, and let life work its magic through us. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to include the details below. You can either sign up for like a subscription where you pay €26 each month, or you can sign up for it all together and you get 1 month free. If you have any questions, you can feel free to get in touch as well.